Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back here at USA Global TV and Radio. My name is KIM-ADELE Randall, and I'm the host of today's show, Authentic Achievements, which was set up a few years ago with the sole purpose of sharing other people's authentic journeys to help others to overcome challenges that they might be facing. And today I'm delighted to be joined by the fabulous Tara Halliday. So Tara will join us in a second, but let me tell you first a little bit about Tara. Tara is a world-class imposter syndrome coach. She guides high-achieving leaders to eliminate imposter syndrome and develop energy, focus, calm resilience, and effortless confidence. Tara brings a practical and scientific approach to helping high performers reach their highest potential. She has over 20 years' experience as a qualified holistic therapist. She's a certified coach and a certified neurofeedback trainer. And she's got a PhD in engineering. She's the author of Amazon #1 bestsellers Unmasking, The Coach's Guide to Imposter Syndrome in 2018 and Outsmart Imposter Syndrome in 2023. Her mission and passion are to free high achievers and leaders from unnecessary internal suffering so they can live happy, meaningful, and successful lives. And as somebody who has suffered from imposter syndrome in the past, I know just how debilitating this is. So without further ado, I'm going to now welcome Tara to come and join us on the show. Tara, welcome.
Thank you very much, Kim. Delighted to be here.
Oh, me too. I always find our conversations so insightful, and I know that our audience is going to do the same. So I've given everybody a bit about your bio, but can you bring that to life for us a little bit more? I mean, I always love your journey from engineering into imposter syndrome overcoming, because it's such an inspired story. So would you share that with us, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, this goes all the way back to when I was like 13 years old and in a careers class at school. And I was asked what would I like to do. And I had two things I was interested in: being a pilot, which I never happened actually. And I also wanted to be a psychologist. My family weren't interested in me being a psychologist. They actually said, there's no money in psychology, you've got to do something more practical. So I went into engineering, like many people influenced by their families. And I had a 10-year career as an engineer. And then finally, I escaped from it and got back to what I really wanted to do, my passion, which was helping people overcome the suffering that they're experiencing in their lives. And so I trained as a holistic therapist and worked on all sorts of people's dramas and traumas and stresses to help them. Some people kept coming back, which was not the point. So what I did is I investigated why, came to, it was a particular belief, found an amazing coaching training around unconditional worth, and we'll probably talk about that a bit more. And then a few years later, a client asked me, is this imposter syndrome? And I said, oh, I don't know. Let me have a look. So I looked into it, researched what imposter syndrome was. And it was this massive light bulb experience for me that, oh, conditional worth, like not unconditional worth, is the same as imposter syndrome. Like one is causing the other. So all of these symptoms that we see with imposter syndrome is actually, here's the root cause. And that changed everything. I decided then and there I was going to become a specialist in imposter syndrome and only focus on this. And that was 8 years ago. So here I still am.
Oh, I love that. And it's so right, isn't it, that you've got that, is that difference between unconditional worth and conditional worth? Because very often when you're in the throes of that imposter syndrome, certainly I know when I was, you had a condition for everything, and you were striving to be perfect, because if you were perfect, you couldn't possibly get it wrong, and then people wouldn't not love you, and you wouldn't not be liked, and you layer in so many unrealistic demands on yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found in this was one of the strangest bits of it is, when you're in the throes of imposter syndrome, the last thing in the world you're going to do is talk to somebody, because then they're definitely going to know you're an imposter, because you spend all of that time going, oh, if only they knew, if only they knew. And yet, as we know, that actually once you start talking about it, then actually you can start to understand it. And once you start to understand it, you can start to have strategies to change that, to have a look at those beliefs that are no longer really serving us, that aren't helping us to achieve, and that are probably still being viewed from a misunderstanding when we were a child. And so it's about having to keep updating that software, isn't it? It's about changing those parts. But tell us more about that unconditional, how you move from conditional belief to unconditional belief, because that's such an interesting link between the two parts of your coaching journey, the earlier one and now the focused one in the last 8 years.
Yeah, so conditional worth is what the vast majority of people experience, and it's a very straightforward idea. It's the idea that your worth as a human being can vary depending on what you do. So you do something good, you are good. You do something bad, you are bad. And we see it absolutely everywhere in society. You know, people say, you know, good boy, good girl, bad dog. It's all a judgment that your worth and your actions are linked. And the problem with that is that even when we're successful, there's then the possibility that we might make a mistake. And if we then make a mistake, we won't be worthy. Now, that doesn't sound like it's a really big deal, but when you get into the way that the brain works, you understand that that is actually a very threatening situation. Your brain interprets it as a threat. Like, so if we're back in caveman times, for example, and if you were chucked out of the tribe, that would be a death sentence, because at those times you couldn't live alone. And so the brain, a primal part of our brain, recognizes this. And that's why conditional worth is so stressful. And when you get then to identifying with your work, then it shows up as imposter syndrome.
I love that. It's so true, isn't it? We do, you do see it all the time. One of the things that I try really hard with my little girl is to not link the two. It's like, that was a naughty choice.
Yes.
You're not a naughty person. Or, you know, that was a great choice. Again, not saying you are you and you are loved always. There may be better choices you can make, but the beauty of choice is you can make a different one. I'll be honest, Tara, sometimes it comes back to haunt me. The other day when I told Pudding, the dog, that he was a silly dog because he jumps up at me and Scarlet put her hands on her hips and went, "Mummy, he is not a silly boy. He made a silly choice." And I was like, yes, thank you for the update. But I love that whole, like, trying to, in she's 7, trying at an early age to get her to recognise that actually don't create that link.
Yes.
Because it's not a good link to create, is it?
No, and it's not that it will happen. I mean, you know, you talk about you know, how we teach children, right? It absolutely gets reinforced, but it's important to understand that this belief is not because we've been a poor parent. It's not because there was any trauma. It's not because the school environment was too challenging or anything like that. And it's not part of a person's personality. It actually goes all the way back to when we were about 2 years old and we were just learning our sense of self, that we're separate from other people, from the cat, from the table. We're learning who we are. And at that point, what really should have happened in our brains is that we should have separated out our worth from our actions. But because this is so pervasive in all societies all around the globe, that simply didn't happen. So you can think of it as a missed developmental step, if you like.
Yeah.
And for people who have imposter syndrome, a lot of the time they judge themselves. They think it must be me, I don't belong. I mean, imposter syndrome is feeling like a fraud when you're not a fraud, and the fear of being found out. And it's massively stressful, and you're overthinking, you're doubting yourself, and there's a constant self-judgment. So when we see the conditional worth belief come up, it's reinforced by what we're judging about ourselves.
I love that. It made me think, I've often thought, when I've been reflecting on my own, journey through imposter syndrome, was that in my simplistic terms, imposter syndrome is when our belief and our ability are not in alignment. So we believe we can't do something, but our ability shows us that actually we can, but we're not seeing the two. So then we're creating something. But I found mine was quite situational. So, for example, if I'm making beans on toast, then I'm pretty okay. I've no doubt there. There's no fear of that ability and that belief. But it's when you achieve something really good that sometimes you're then kind of going, oh, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe I was lucky. Maybe I was. And we start to almost look for excuses for the success rather than accept and own the success.
Yes.
And for me, one of my big breakthroughs, I'd love your thoughts on this, was when I suddenly realized this one particular day that I was inadvertently making my opinion more valid and more credible than people I aspired to be like. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I don't believe that's right. So all these people that I aspire to be like, they're telling me I'm really good at my job, that are giving me awards, that are doing all of these things, and I'm going, if only they knew. If only they knew what I do. I'm inadvertently saying my opinion is better and more valid than their opinion. And for me, that really helped me in the starting to be able to change some of those beliefs by going, well, actually, I think they're more credible, so I'm going to trust that they're right and work to that. Is that something you've seen in the work you've been doing?
Yeah, there's a conflict that goes on in the brain when you have imposter syndrome. Logically, right, intellectually, you know that you're capable and you're competent. You can do that. So those things that other people are praising you for, you know logically that you can do that, but it's just internally you're feeling like you're not quite good enough, and maybe it was a fluke, maybe it was just good timing, maybe it was just lucky, and so you've got this internal conflict going on. You're trying to believe two things at the same time that that are fighting each other. And so yes, you can definitely talk about it in terms of not believing other people. But the problem with conditional worth is that that's quite a vulnerable step to take, because if you start believing them, then there's the possibility that you might be praised, and there's also the possibility that you might be criticized. So there's kind of almost imposter syndrome can lead to like you keeping yourself small such that people won't find you out. Not that you are a fraud, but discover that you're not quite as good as they seem to think you are. So there's quite a lot of layers. It can get quite subtle with this.
Yeah, I love that. I know when I was going through it myself, I almost sometimes I feel like I'm a bit schizophrenic, because I'd be having one conversation externally whilst internally trying to quiet the little voice that was telling me I was going to mess it up, I was going to get it wrong, I was going to get found out, and hoping that the voice in my head conversation wasn't going to come out of my mouth. So it was like, actually, how do you cope with trying to run two simultaneous conversations, but actually it became a way of life for many years. It was my way of life, and it's hard, and it's soul destroying at times, because it doesn't matter how many external accolades you get until you can go inward. Well, for me, on my journey, until I could go inward and start to see for myself where actually there was evidence that I wasn't a fraud, actually, that I could accept and acknowledge, that I was able to start changing that voice from being, my inner critic to at least, maybe not quite my inner cheerleader, we're not quite there yet, but at least to be my inner friend, which for me was a massive move forward. And it's hard. One of the hardest lessons that I found was facing the truth that I was the one that was getting in my own way, that I was the one that was being my own worst enemy, and that actually that I could do something about that. I could fix that. And once you go in and then start looking at that, make that move from my worth is not attached to what I do. They're separate.
Yeah.
I can agree with somebody and still be liked. I can have a different opinion and still get there. What was a real eye opener, and the only bit I'm sad about is I started that journey in my late 40s. Probably would have been super helpful to have started it much earlier in life. So how do people get started on that journey to move their position of conditional worth to becoming their position of unconditional worth?
Right. Well, you'd said it very well. It starts with becoming aware of the situation, right? Aware of, this is imposter syndrome and it's not me. Even that is helpful, right? Just knowing that it's not your personality, it's not a weakness, it's not a flaw, it's not about your gender, it's not about your environment, it's none of that. It kind of takes the pressure off just a little bit to say, okay, it is something else. And the reason it's always so confusing is that we don't see that underlying belief. It's an unconscious belief. So your brain's saying, oh, I'm procrastinating, I'm a perfectionist, I'm comparing all the time, I always feel I need one more qualification, all these kind of symptoms of imposter syndrome, stress and sleeplessness it causes. You're looking for what is the problem here. And it's hard to find it because your brain can't identify it. So when you finally recognize, oh, this is an unconscious belief, and it's my unconscious belief, then that's a brilliant starting place. Now, I love what you said, because if you just say, this is mine, right? This is I'm getting in my way, you could just follow the line of blame. But what you said is it gave me hope that I could fix it, right? And that is really the key. And to fix the conditional worth belief, it actually takes a very specific set of steps to go through, because you're changing the way that your brain is interpreting the outside world in very specific way.
Yeah, no, I've always thought that, your belief, your inner beliefs, they become a little bit like a tabletop. This is in my head how I imagine it. And every time that you have an experience that reinforces that, it's like you get another leg on that table until in the end you've got the most stable table you're ever going to have. It's going nowhere. And so when you're trying to then change that belief, you now need to have a new table and put the legs under there and take them away from here. So it's, to your point, it's a systematic step-by-step approach, isn't it? You can't just go, I'm going to just think this instead, because our brains don't work that way, do they? They wait for those chinks in our armor when they can come back with that voice we're so used to and go, surprise, here I am. You've not rid of me, unless you do it in a systematic way, the same way it was created in the first place.
That's it.
Because to your point earlier, we get this because there is so much that goes on across all cultures, across all societies, across all families, across all education elements, where without anybody meaning to, we're subtly reinforcing that piece that makes it conditional, that makes it something that we best not. And as you also said, you know, we are living with brains that were designed for when we were in the caves. You know, we might be, you know, we might be super intelligent, but our brain still has a main operating system of fight or flight, because it needed to, because every decision could cost you your life. And so we apply the same level of fear to things that aren't going to cause us death now, don't we? It's like, we're not going to die if we get that bit wrong, but we still respond neuroscientifically as if the threat were that real. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes, it's our normal, natural, healthy response to a perceived threat. And so really the only problem is that perceived threat isn't a genuine threat. You know, somebody's disapproval is not going to kill us, right? And because that's what the brain's telling you. And you're absolutely right in terms of we've got so much reinforcement of this particular belief that we need to, we need to make those changes. We take away the legs of that old table, but without it all collapsing, right? This isn't about tearing down your life. This is almost like systematically replacing one leg with another, and then, you know, building up to the a better way for your brain to interpret what's around you. And when you do that, then you've got unconditional worth, right? Which means that practically you get experiences like you forget to doubt yourself. Right? It's not that you're having to talk yourself into it or do any kind of morning routine to psych yourself up for the day, or, you know, to be mindful about things and practical about things. No, you completely forget to doubt yourself. You have a effortless confidence because of that, because you're not trying to fight your internal mind anymore, your belief that fight has gone. And so it brings a sense of adventure. It brings a sense of joy. It increases your mood, increases your energy. You sleep better. You're much, much calmer, and you start to really enjoy the work that you do and enjoy the challenges that come up. They can become fun rather than daunting.
I love that, because very often we can do that, can't we? You know, we can find, some people find change, as an example, something that is to be feared and dreaded, and yet pretty much the only constant in life is change. But again, it's about how we are able to frame it better in our minds, so that we don't have to be deathly fearful of what's on the other side of that change. And as you said, you know, we're creating new tables, but also I think we're reinforcing perhaps those very small tables that are in there that are hidden from sight by the big monster table that created on a belief that doesn't serve us, to say, well, actually what we're doing is also creating some space for those smaller tables to come to light, so that you can turn the light up on them. Because as you say, it's not about dismantling who we are up until that point, and kind of, you know, not the cocoon that becomes the butterfly. What we're saying is it's the evolution, isn't it? It's the looking at those parts that say, these don't quite work for me. And, you know, I was chatting to somebody the other day, I think we chatted about it last time I spoke to you. It's almost like, I'm just looking because at my phone, but, you know, every time there's an operating system update, we're like magpies, and we're straight in there, must do that, can't possibly leave it outdated. And yet if we don't go and do the same with ourselves, how many bugs are in there? How many things that, not for anybody's malicious intent, but just now we've got better thinking, better knowledge, we've got more data within which to make different observations of the same thing, then wouldn't we take the opportunity to do our own operating system update? Because if not, you know, if I looked at mine, if I hadn't gone back and really done the digging, then actually we've pretty much, like you said, starts at 2, and then I believe that we, we kind of again at 7, and then we reinforce at 14, and at 21 we embed it. And if we don't go back and look at it, that will be the unconscious blueprint driving our lives. And I think for me that was the kind of really interesting fact, is like you're not doing it consciously. Your subconscious brain is driving it. So it's very hard to, until you become intentional and go and look at it and ask the questions.
Yeah.
So your subconscious brain, which in my head it's like the library of my mind. So I ask the right question and it runs back into the library and it brings you the evidence or the information, based on what you've got. But if you don't know what to ask it,
Yes,
it doesn't know how to do that. And that's part of what you do, isn't it? Is help people identify what's the question you need to be asking it to know which parts you need to now reframe to see whether they can serve you better. Would that be?
Yeah, that's part of the process, is doing that reframing. What the part that we're changing is the unconscious part. So there's a part of your brain, it's called the amygdala. It's 2 sides of your brain, just behind your eyes, and it's called the fear center of the brain. And this has, if you like, a list of dangers. Right, the fire, the tiger, the fast-moving car, the things that you should react to because they're a genuine threat to survival. And that operates faster than your conscious mind does. So it gets the information from your surroundings a few milliseconds before the thinking part of your brain works and gets that information. So it reacts faster. So the only way you're actually going to change that response is to work at the level of the amygdala and change that unconscious. So in terms of your library analogy, we're just taking this book out and when it's out of your library, you don't go back to it, which is the really positive thing. And you aren't led by it. You're not triggered into doing it, triggered into the stress and survival state. And so it makes it a very this is why it's why your confidence becomes effortless, because the thing that was blocking you has been taken away. So it's a subtraction rather than even a substitution.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because then you really are kind of like, well, I guess changing that list of what are there to be fearful of. Like you say, when you have fast-moving car coming at you, probably needs to stay on that list.
Yeah, look at that one.
but it's looking at the ones that go, actually, these don't need to be on this list of things that go, warning, we need to be scared now. We need to be we need to be in protect ourselves mode, because actually they're just things. They will come and go. It's never the mistake that defines us. It's what we do with the mistake, because that's where the growth and the learning comes from. But that's easy to say once you've got rid of the fear of ever getting it wrong. When you're stuck in getting it wrong is as bad as that tiger running towards me, then you're bound to respond in a very different space, aren't you?
Exactly. And you're right, you can't think fast enough to stop that response. So you have to change it by taking that book out of the library. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So tell us more, Tara, about how people can kind of work with you and what you're doing next.
Yeah, so I've been working with people in a one-to-one program. It's over 13 weeks, where we basically systematically change this belief. So it's a step-by-step. It's a momentum program, and it's very systematic. It's based on the way that the brain works. There's a lot of science behind it, and it gets absolutely fantastic results. That effortless confidence I was talking about, that's all part of it. And so I've been working and I've got results from that which show that this is actually better than everything else, any other approach to imposter syndrome that's out there. It's very exciting work. It's very consistent. So what I'm doing now is I'm proving how robust it is. Somebody asked me, they challenged me actually. They said, is this you or is it your process? Because you're such a brilliant coach, or is it the process? And I absolutely believe it's the process. So I'm proving that right now. I'm training up a group of coaches to run my program, and they'll be running them with, and they've got some practice clients that they're going to work with to, and then they'll collect the data at the end, and we'll write a paper, and it'll be all very, very exciting. And so what I'm looking for right now is for some of these practice clients. So that's at a hugely discounted rate, because this is research. Although these are highly experienced coaches, they're training in this new system, and I'm supervising them. So for that, we have this super low cost way to permanently get rid of imposter syndrome. And that's such an opportunity for somebody who's been, for anyone who's been plagued by imposter syndrome and, hasn't got other larger budget that, often corporate executives have. So you can get in contact with me. I think my website's outsmartimpostersyndrome.com, and there's my LinkedIn right there. And we'll together show how systematically effective it is.
Oh, I love that. And I love that the approach that you're taking is systematic, because that's the process anyway. So the process is systematic, but you're taking a systematic approach to then testing its validity and its success, and ensuring that that people can have that confidence that they are going to really be able to get rid of this that has felt probably such a big part of them. Something that I've got a group on Facebook for people, as you know, for people that are trying to overcome imposter syndrome, just from a share resources and things. And you read some of their stories, and it's heartbreaking to see the devastating impact that this can have, and how much people are holding themselves back from their full potential, from what they're really here to do, from what they're here to, the gift that they've got to give to the world, because of the fact that they're still listening to that misdirection from missed step. And I think for me, that what I love about what you're doing is you're helping them redirect, you helping them have a better operating system to enable them to make choices moving forward that aren't going to hold them back. And I love that whole authentic confidence piece, because clearly I've got a show called Authentic Achievements. It's really important to me, and actually that was part of why I rebranded to Authentic Achievements nearly 4 years ago, which was actually at the point where I had gone and done the work, changed some of those things, and gone, actually, it's okay to be authentically me. Fine, and I am perfectly imperfect. And that doesn't mean to say I don't try and get better. It doesn't mean to say I don't try and continue to develop. It doesn't mean to say I go, oh yeah, I'm just rubbish at that. I still try and go, well, yeah, I'm not very good at it now, or I'm not very good at it yet. For me, one of the most powerful words in the English language is the word yet, because when you change the end of the sentence to that, it makes such a big impact. I share about my little girl all the time, but she said the other week, oh, I'm rubbish at colouring. And I said, okay, let's have a moment. I'm not good at colouring yet, but let's have a think about it. How much better is your colouring today than it was last week? And she compared the two, and she went, oh, it's better. And how about last week to last year? Well, it's much better. And how about last year to the year before? She went, oh, mummy, miles apart, like so much better. I said, how do you feel about colouring now? She went, I'm quite good, aren't I? I was like, yeah. Once we change the word to say yeah, we open the brain, don't we, to look for the opportunities for us to get better at it.
Yes. The opportunity is always there. And when you're not judging yourself for it, you're not feeling bad about things for it, then you can step into and explore. And then, like, like your daughter, exploring her coloring then becomes something that's fun and exciting, and she can be creative about it rather than being disappointed about it or judging herself for it, things like that.
I love that. And as you can see, we've got the website up so people can see more about kind of the work that you're doing, and hopefully, get involved, particularly if you're listening or watching today and you recognize that feeling of being an imposter. And having been there, I feel your pain, and highly recommend that you find help and support to do the work to change it. Because I think for me, one of the things that I believe people like yourself and Tara are offering is that psychologically safe space within which to do the work. And we can't do it on our own, because we can't, we've all got blind spots for a reason. We are blind to them. Unless we have somebody else with us who can shine the light on those blind spots, they're going to stay there. They're going to still be in that list right here. It's going to pick us up and make us feel like we've not overcome it. But you also have to be in a psychologically safe space to be able to go and do the work here, don't you? And to know that you've got somebody you trust that is going to be there to guide and support you through that. And so I think the work you're doing is I can see why it's a passion and a purpose rather than a job, because the impact when you see somebody now on their own side is the best feeling in the world, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. I have a wrap-up session at the end of every program, and most of the time I've got tears in my eyes because it's so wonderful, so beautiful to see this shift. The person themselves has blossomed, right? They've got all of these, negative thoughts, negative patterns, restrictions, stresses, and they've dropped them all because they've changed the thing that's causing it, and their freedom, their joy. It's so exciting, and I just absolutely love it. It's a real pleasure. I would not want to do anything else with my life than this, because it's just so amazing.
I love that. I mean, Tara, time has literally disappeared on us. I can't believe we've got about 10 seconds to wrap up the show. It is always such an amazing delight to chat to you. And thank you so very much for being with us today and for sharing such insight with me and with everybody watching and listening. Thank you so much.
Absolute delight. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share and for making this a lovely conversation as well.
Oh, bless you. Thank you, and I look forward to next time. Yes. And to everybody listening and watching, I hope you found today's session enjoyable, insightful, inspiring you to go and have a look at any of those misdirections that might be getting in your way. And if you do, please do drop them in the comments and let us know. We'd love to know how you're living your authentically achieved life. And until next time, take care.